Welcome to another episode of the More Than a Side Hustle podcast, where we help 9-to-5ers create more impact, income, and influence outside their jobs. My name is Anthony.
And I'm Janoka. Sorry, I was looking to see if one of you guys left a review and y'all didn't. But my name is Janoka. Thanks for joining us again for another Tuesday. A reminder to please go ahead and leave us a review, write a comment. But for those, thank you for showing up week after week, subscribing, and sharing with others.
Yeah, we appreciate that. We're continuing to grow, continuing to reach a larger audience, and continuing to share the message, man. You guys know we're all about creating options and helping you guys think about options. And speaking of options, we had the option of going on vacation recently, which was absolutely amazing. Which we just got back from Turks and Caicos.
Which before that, I think we spoke about this, we were Usher, so multiple vacations kind of close to each other, but this one was a family one.
Yeah.
It was the first time we were able to bring my mother on vacation with us. We've been on vacation with her, like with our family reunions, but it was just us two, Alani and her, so that was a great opportunity. And we, like you said, we went to Turks and Caicos and visited the most beautiful beach in the world, Grace Bay. We stayed along that strip. So it was really, really nice and also very, very expensive. People hear the islands and you always assume prices of like a DR or Jamaica, and all of them ain't like them. The driver was like, we are not a third world country. Mm-hmm. They get everything imported. So we've been to Hawaii before. They get everything imported as well. So prices are high. We're talking Vegas, California prices there. Just to give you an idea, their minimum wage is $9. So yeah. Some states has the minimum wage here. So they are not a poor island at all.
That is nuts. And to give you guys some context, I don't know what city and state you're listening from. Also, drop that in the comments. Let us know you watch this on YouTube, what city and state you are watching this from.
We have the most people.
Because I'm curious on that. So their gallon of gas is $7. $7 gallon
American
of gas.
dollars. They use American dollars.
USD. $7 USD. In Texas, our gallon of gas is about $3.50, sometimes $4. It just depends, right? Mm-hmm. New York is about $4, $5. Maybe. California is maybe $4.50, $5, $6. They are at $7 a gallon right now for gas. And this is Turks and Caicos. It was absolutely beautiful, but prices were extremely high. Mm-hmm. And speaking about money, I think I want to stay on that one. You said it was very expensive. And I think while we were out there, that's the only thing. Obviously, things were beautiful. But I was thinking about the prices of things every single day. And that was on the top of my mind the entire time.
Well, part of it is like, I generally do the planning of our vacations of stuff. So it's not like it's a shocker to me. I'm aware when I'm going someplace that it's this price versus the other. Now, for you, maybe it's more of a shocker because you just pack your bag and show up.
Yeah.
Right? You just like, okay, what do I need to bring? So when you start hearing things when you checking in, you're like, well, maybe I should be checking in a bit more as to what you're doing over here when you're planning trips.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm like, yeah, we really don't. I kind of asked you, are you okay with this island? Or maybe if I'm stuck between a hotel, I'm like, okay, check these two out. Maybe. That rarely ever happens because I kind of work with somebody else on that. But you're really kind of out the loop of it. So I guess when you get there and you're like, what? What is this cost? Like, what? How much is that? How much is this? Like we're saying, every drink is no less than $17 to $20 for a drink. In the street, in the hotel, in a restaurant. Like, it's not like you're saying the hotel is just charging you over the head. That's their pricing everywhere you go. In the tourist area, obviously, if you can go to a local area, which we weren't there necessarily. And even in the local areas that have the tourist area, they're still charging those prices. So it's not like you can get away from it. But I think that also is what makes it more of a shocker for you, or like kind of like counting like, what are we spending?
That's
because you're just showing up. Maybe if you're more involved.
No, I don't think that changes anything. And this kind of makes me think about the value of money. And I still believe no matter how much you make, the value of money doesn't change significantly. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm where I am today, $20 for a drink is still expensive for a drink.
That's true. Because we went to Vegas, we said the same thing.
We said the same thing in Vegas.
Yeah.
It was like
$20 a drink there too.
So when you think about money, you think that the more money you make, the more, now you may spend it more freely. Mm-hmm. You know, growing up, $20 was a lot. It was life changing. It was a lot of money. You had $20 for a week to spend.
That also is age.
Yeah, age. If I'm 10 years from today and I'm still making more money, $20 for a drink is still going to be expensive. And I think the value of money remains remains the same no matter what income bracket you're at. Because if you're broke and $20 is a lot of money, and we're up and $20 is a lot of money, it's still relative. It's still relative. It's still pricey to both of us. So people are like, when you think about money, you're like, oh, you should be able to afford that. Oh, you should be able to do this and that. Yeah, I can do that. But no matter how much more money we are making, the price of something is still going to be it's still going to be an expected amount that you should be paying for something.
I could agree and disagree to it. I understand in this situation probably, but I think there's other things that I may be like, it is what it is, depending on where I'm at now.
Okay,
what's an example? I couldn't even, I don't know right at the top of my head, but some things don't feel the same because it's not the same amount of percentage coming out of my pocket. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
So like,
it makes a lot of sense.
You know, you make $100K and you spend $2,000 on something versus you're making $20K, you spend $2,000 on something. It's a whole different impact. So maybe I may feel, depending on what it is, like, okay, it's just $2K. It's not a lot. It's not a lot of money for me.
So does that $2K change based? Does the $2K being quote unquote and expensive is also relative, but
definitely relative, yeah.
So if something costs $2K, and for me, I'm like, that's expensive, and the person that makes $20K says that's expensive, the value of the dollar doesn't change. We're both like, that's expensive.
But somebody else may not, though. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So if I think about it, let's think about courses. That's a prime example. Mm-hmm. Maybe a few years ago, I would say $2,000 for a course. A course is a lot. Now I may be like, oh, that's all they're charging? Mm-hmm. So I no longer feel that way because I have a different percentage of it. It's not the same amount. That's why I said point. I think it depends on what it is at that time. So I know some people say like, I ain't never going to change. Regardless, that $20 is always going to be too much to me, right? Is somebody like Usher saying that? Is somebody like Jay-Z saying that? Is somebody like, you know what I mean? Like, are they thinking that $20, maybe they are. I don't know. But I think that's a personal thing. I don't think that it necessarily means that no matter what, no matter how big you get or how much money you make, that you're always going to feel this thing is too expensive.
So let me change my statement then. So let me change it to not the price of it, the value of it.
The value of it. Okay.
So so you went to courses, and now I'm thinking about the value of it. Mm-hmm. It changes the perception of what's expensive versus what is not based on the value that I'm getting from that. Mm-hmm. So we're saying a drink is $20 being expensive. Well, in my mind, it's like, well, it's a drink, whatever. Or like, well, I'm getting no value from it. Or it's like, yo, this drink is exactly what I need at this time. So my value of that drink price changes based on what it could do for me.
Well, that's the way that you think of things in life as well. Mm-hmm. Like for me, I'm like, it don't have to bring anything to me when I'm spending it. Like, you know, when I say something like, oh, I could say, I don't know, I gotta buy these Beyonces. He's like, well, what is Beyonce giving you? And I'm like, well, what is anything giving you? Yeah. Like that's, so I know for you think of things in that way, like what's the exchange maybe? But for me, that's not the case. I don't need to necessarily receive something back, if that makes sense.
So for our room was probably one of the best rooms I think we've stayed in.
I would agree. But maybe the Maldives? What do you think?
Maybe Maldives.
You're like in the ocean.
Well, yeah,
with the pool right there.
Yeah, that was a different experience. But I'm thinking about what I was able to. Now the room didn't give me any. What am I getting from this room?
Okay.
But I know the room was really expensive. Mm-hmm. Now I was completely comfortable with that level of expensive because I felt like the value of it was extremely high. Yeah. Based on what I received. Mm-hmm. We had one of the top rooms at the very top of the building. We had oceanfront views. We had 2.5 bathrooms, walk in this, walk in that, kitchen, living room, stove, balcony, all that stuff. But for me, it was like, well, I understand that this room is expensive, but I also know the value I'm getting from this room. Mm-hmm. I also know that this room is going to give me peace of mind. I also know I'm going to be able to chill. I'm going to be able to relax. I'm going to be able to know that I'm separating myself from everyone else. I know that I can have my own space. I know that there's only 2 rooms on this floor, so I don't have to deal with a bunch of noise up here as well. Mm-hmm. So this kind of goes back to the value statement that I was able to get from that room.
Yeah, you're big on comfort.
Yeah.
You're willing to spend on comfort, definitely.
Yeah.
That is your thing. So I guess, like we always say, I think value, things that are priciness can be relative. But I guess at this stage in my life, I will still say that $20 is pricey. Can I afford it? Yeah. Do I still probably get 3-4 drinks? Yes. But it still can be pricey.
and this kind of goes into a conversation I was having on a webinar. So if you guys don't know, well, let me explain what a webinar is, number one. So a webinar is pretty much a conference online for you to kind of learn something, right? And throughout this time, there's speakers or one speaker, and they're teaching you something with the intention of either selling you something or to get you into a program or just to help you learn something, right? So one of our students who hit $1 million in his cleaning business, Alex,
well, you can find that episode about 2 episodes behind this.
Yeah, so we just interviewed him on a podcast. That episode went crazy on YouTube. It was like 700 views in like less than a day. So shout out to you guys for leaving reviews and thumbs up and all of that stuff and watching it. And he was talking about the value of the information, because we're talking about value of money, value of information. He was saying how when he got into the university, the price was like a fraction of what it is today.
Way lower.
A fraction of what it is today. But he was like, the value was, he's like, there's no way you could turn, let's say $500 into $1 million business. Like, that's unheard of.
The ROI on that.
ROI is unheard of. So the value on that is absolutely insane. But someone else may come in and see that, all right, well, $500 is too much for me. I don't see the value in this.
Yeah.
So you got the same exact thing, and the values be completely off based
for each person.
On the perception of the person. He can see, like, this business has made me over $1 million. Yeah, it's worth $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, whatever the price is, because the value is tenfold that. But someone may see that same price and be like, well, it's not even worth half of that. So how could the value system be so off for the same information or the same drink, for example?
It's all a personal thing. I mean, that's the same thing with luxury, right? Any luxury brand. Some people will say it's absurd. I would never pay those prices. It doesn't make sense. And some people, you walk in and they're shopping there every weekend. I mean, it's just life. I don't even know how to say how could it be. It's just life, what you believe in, what you can afford, what you feel is valuable. Because, a lot of times we speak about that with certain luxury things. We're like, we actually can't afford it, but it's like, how much do you really want it? Right?
That's a good point.
Because you could have bought it by now. Like, you have it there, but you didn't buy it. What's the holdup?
So like, how bad is the
thing that you want?
Not even
whatever it is.
How bad? Not how bad do you want it? How bad is it
important to you? Like, how important is it
exactly?
To you? How important is it to you? That's a good question.
So the more important something is, the higher value
that you probably have to, and that you're willing to pay. Maybe the more important it is to you, right? For example, I'm probably not going to pay a certain price to see, let's see, Adele in concert, right? But I would probably pay the same price to see Beyonce, because she just has a higher value to me. But it's the same price. Yeah. They're still both on a higher level.
If Adele was $5,000 and Beyonce was $5,000.
Yeah. So it's like, for me, because I like Beyonce, then that's the route I'm going. So it's all personal choice and opinion as to how important you see it is. Obviously, what you can afford. And different personalities, different opinions. And I know something that we always speak about, that people just, and that's probably on the episode before this, think that a lot of things are scams and stuff like that. So people don't believe in opening their eyes up to other things. So, my saying is, you don't know what you don't know. So if they're not open to it, then they're never going to know that I could pay $300 or $3,000 and make $1 million, because you just don't believe that it's true. It's just not possible, right? So there's a lot that goes into decision making for people. Yeah.
But you said that what you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
But once you do know, now you're just being ignorant. You're choosing to be ignorant. Because if I show you, because if I tell you is one thing, and then if I show you is another thing, and then somebody else does it, it's a whole nother thing. Right. So you got three points of entry for you to change your mindset, not from being a person of lack of knowledge, but being a person of lack of belief. It's different. I don't know it. Okay, now you know it. But then now I don't believe you, but I showed you it. So now you're choosing to be continuously ignorant.
Maybe you just continue to not believe me, but then you're saying, like, I showed you something else. But yeah, I think it just comes down to, everything okay? Oh, I think it just comes down to, like, the person's belief system, what they want, what they choose to believe in, what they can afford, and just the exposure. I think with social media, obviously there's good and bad. of things that expose you to what's available to you and what's not, right? But it's up to you to choose and decide what I want to listen to, what I believe, what I don't. So, I mean, I can't, you know me, I ain't here to change everybody's mind.
So where do we get,
I can't do that.
Value system is probably very important. So how do you adjust your value system from where you were growing up?
Your environment, you networking, age, environment, networking, age, and I guess however you gain knowledge. Now that one is tricky because I don't really gain knowledge, to be quite honest. Like I don't read, I don't listen to podcasts, but I am on social media and I think I get knowledge from there. I definitely get knowledge from there. Maybe not the New York Times knowledge, but I do get some type of knowledge and exposure from there as well. So those are the ways I think that you can change your value system. Networking, environment, age, like growing and just kind of learning, and those things come with it. And then I guess putting yourself out there, or however you can like learn more.
That's one of the biggest things that we have to do is begin to not, I don't want to say change our value system, but we have to monitor it.
Be willing to hear outside of it. Like think
we got to be willing to adjust it, and we got to be willing to look into it and say, yeah, this is not who I am or what. Because a lot of times you grow up with this value, like this is a conversation around money and values, but I think even growing up, a lot of our values.
Think about that with kids.
Yeah, our values are instilled from us from our parents. Mm-hmm. So if I'm thinking that I have to work hard for money all the time, then that's going to be my value system.
Yeah.
I'm a hard worker. I go to work. I get a check. I come home. I do the same thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. And my value system is based on what I saw my parents do and what their parents saw and what their parents saw. There was this, I forgot what he was watching about the ham. So
No, we were at Tim's documentary.
So we were at one of our friends' documentaries, and he was talking about traditions and values.
And
Tim Jackson,
like generational trauma and things like that. Yeah.
So a lot of our traditions, a lot of our values come from our parents. And he was like, there was this story about a Thanksgiving family where they had this ham on the table, and one piece of the ham was always cut off, right?
The butt, yeah.
So the butt of the ham was always cut off. So the girl came. The piece of the ham was cut off at the very end. And
the husband reminded me of you.
The husband was like, why do you cut the piece of the ham off? And she's like, oh, you gotta ask my mom. That's the way my mom did it. Mm-hmm. So he went to the mom. The mom was in the kitchen. He's like, hey, mom, why do you always cut the butt of the ham off the very end? He said, oh, that's the way my mom did it. So
and her mom was actually there too.
And the mom was there, and her great grandmom was there. So he went to ask the great grandmom. He said, great grandma, why do you cut the butts of the ham off? And she was like, well, I had a small stove and we didn't have enough room to fit it on the stove.
Back in the day.
The
stove was small.
He's like, we've been cutting this damn ham for 3-4 generations the same way, and nobody asked a question about why we're doing this. And we were just doing it over and over again. So that comes down to you evaluating and having someone ask, maybe not someone externally, but you asking yourself, why do I do these things? Mm-hmm. Why do I think this way? Why am I doing the same things over and over again?
And Tony's one to challenge those type of things because, my family's from Panama, but we have a lot of Caribbean background. So there's a lot of, if you want to say superstitions or certain things that we follow or say don't do it. And he's like, but why? And I'm like, I ain't ask no questions. And I think you, as the person or the family, you don't see anything wrong with it. So you're like, why am I even questioning it? Like, there's no reason for me to know why. I just know that that's what we do or don't do. Mm-hmm. There's no there's no harm to it, right? That's the way you think of it. Like, there's no harm happening. So why am I asking anybody, why should I not, or should I do this, or should I not do this? You just know this is the way it is. But when I heard that story, I definitely thought of you because it's like, you'd be asking like, okay, but why? But what is the reason behind her not stepping over the cat? Like, whatever the superstition.
Let me give you guys an example, right? Because we're talking about We're talking about values. We're talking about where you get your values, money, but everything at this point.
Everything, yeah.
Because your money values come from your parents and everything else comes from them as well. So like an example was, don't sit a baby on the table. And I thought that was foolish. I thought it was because the baby could fall and get hurt, which makes sense to me. But there is a tradition or a saying
my Guyanese best friend
in the family that said, if you set the baby on a table, the baby will grow up to be a thief.
A thief, yeah.
And I asked, how does it connect? Because I'm just curious. Like, I'm not downplaying what you guys are thinking because what you think is what you think. But I'm curious as to why. I want to know.
That's why we probably should Google it because no one had a why.
So I'm asking the person that said it, and they said, "Oh, we've been doing this. This is what we do." So my mother does it. I asked the mother, "Oh, this is just what we do." I have nobody else to ask, but I'm asking everyone in the group. I'm like, "So can anyone tell me why we do this? It's just a thing we do." So I said, "Oh, okay." Now I'm challenging that because there is no reason why I shouldn't challenge it.
If Alani becomes a thief
so
20 years from now.
So the only way we know this is if we remember that I put Alani on the table and I still put her on the table.
But then even then you're like, is that really the reason she became a thief?
Or did she have values from her parents that made her a thief? So it could be two different reasons.
There's so many things, yeah.
It could be two different reasons in the family why Alani becomes a thief. It could be the table, or it could be she has thief tendencies from us.
Yeah. And then, I mean, another one I wonder, like, for Caribbean households is, like, on Sundays, we have the same exact meal every single Sunday. Rice and peas, stewed chicken, and some other meat, whatever it is, every single Sunday. But I'm, like, wonder if that was just a way to bring the family together. Like, that makes a bit more sense. But there's so many other things, and it's like, but why? Like, something like, this is something that can go far, like Scott tissue. Like, okay. He's like, where you going with it?
I'm waiting.
Scott tissue in my household, we only bought 1-ply Scott tissue, and we never had the soft Scott tissue, and tissue, and I didn't know why. Toilet paper. My mother was saying because the toilet would get stopped up.
Yeah.
Right. Because we were from the project, so you couldn't have that thick paper. Right. So then eventually, I just kept using that 1-ply, and then finally one day we're like, let's buy 2-ply. Let's just do that. And it's like a game changer. But that's something so small, and that's tradition, if you will, or value, if you will, because that's what you know. That's what you grew up with. And you don't even realize. You don't even question it because you're just like, it's part of what I know and how I grew up.
So imagine this. Imagine if you never went out of, whoever it was, your mother or yourself, never went out your way to get 2-ply tissue, right? So now you're bringing that tradition into your adulthood. You bring that tradition everywhere you go. You're like, oh, I just buy 1-ply. This is what I do. I don't even know if they still make 1-ply.
Yes,
if they do,
of course
they need to throw
have
that
to
away.
Make more. Yeah, I don't know the last time I felt 1-ply, and I don't want to.
So imagine the traditions you are bringing into your family just because it was like, let's say you never asked your mother, and that was just what you did. This is what you knew. And she's like, oh, that's just what we do. And you just bring that into your family week after week, year after year, month after month, whatever it is, generation after generation, and no one ever asked the question.
There's so many things that I can think of that's hilarious.
So you guys have to start asking the questions as to why do I think like this? Why do I place certain values on certain things? And the opposite, why don't I place certain values on certain things? Like going back to like our jobs, our tradition, like everyone in my generation, millennials, were like, our parents didn't go to college, or some of them did, right? But it wasn't like a norm for our parents to go to college. When our parents started going to college, it became more of a, oh, you went to college? Okay, you're doing your thing. Our generation was, you have to go to college. Because their generation started to go to college. The generation before them probably couldn't go to college. So our grandparents are like, you guys don't have the ability to go to college, but if you do, that's great. Then our parents instilled into us, we have to go to college. So now generations after us are like, well, I have to go to college. But then at some point you start to say, well, maybe you don't, maybe you're not.
Maybe you could be a plumber.
Maybe you actually should go to a trade school.
Yeah.
Because now trade schools are dying. Like people aren't in trade schools anymore because everyone had to go to college. People go to college, get, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. But then they're coming out without a job. They're coming out without a trade. And now all the trades jobs are going up to be higher priced because the demand is there, but the supply isn't. Nobody's graduating college and doing trade jobs anymore. Or not even going to college and doing trade jobs. Yeah. And now we have a generation where we're like, well, you might not need to go to college.
Maybe I don't.
Maybe I don't need to go to. Now we have a generation.
Maybe you don't. Listen.
Exactly. Now you have a generation that's like, maybe I don't have to get a 9-to-5 because my parents had a 9-to-5 and their parents had a 9-to-5. Parents before them probably were factory workers and they had a 7 to 10 or something like that. So we have to question where we get our traditions from and where we place our traditions from. We place our values. Somebody was like,
I have a tradition I need to ask. My mother's downstairs and I want to ask.
Somebody had posted a comment. They can't even pronounce the word. And I'm like, we are live here. There's no edits here.
Which word? Oh, I did see that. I couldn't pronounce it at the time.
I still can't, but I don't remember what the word was.
The tradition I want to ask my mother is, y'all ever had, I don't know if this is a Caribbean household thing, but you couldn't go out like 2 weekends in a row. Like if you went out one time with friends on Friday, the next week you couldn't go out again. Like what
We
is
had that too.
What do you think the reason for that is? I think somebody was like, because you shouldn't be in these streets at a young age.
Well, that was one. My mother was like, I don't want you placing a burden on anyone else.
Oh, but you was going to somebody's house. But I'm talking
Yeah.
about just going out. Like if I'm going to the movies this weekend, then I can't be at a party next weekend.
Because I think you make yourself too accessible.
You don't know either, though. This is your assumption. I need to hear from my mother's mouth. What was the reason for that? Like, I need to know what your reason is for that. But I think I'm thinking
Accessibility.
too accessible to who? The streets?
To the streets.
Yeah, that's
everyone.
what I'm thinking. I'm thinking because it's like you too young to be in these streets all the time.
Especially if you're a young lady and every.
Yeah.
We can talk about that for a little bit too, because a lot of these ladies are accessible, right? Because growing up, I'm 37 now. 37.
Yes.
So I'm 37, right?
To think a little bit.
So with me and you growing up, I wasn't able to see you every day. Like if you were traveling or whatever, you wasn't coming outside. If you came outside Friday, you wasn't coming outside Saturday. It made it more appealing, right? It was like, oh, well, I can't see her. I don't know. I can see her on Fridays.
But I don't think that was the mindset of my mother. Let's make it more appealing for the people on the block. I don't think that was.
But I think you as a young lady or a lady in general was like, all right, you make things too accessible. If somebody can see you all the time, they can touch you all the time, especially now in the social media age. That's one of the challenges you get too. People become too accessible to you. They feel like they know you. They feel like they could touch you. They feel like they could say whatever they want. They feel like they know your insides and outs. And they know your life. But sometimes accessibility is
a problem. So we're thinking that's the one. Okay, we'll see.
So I think that's it.
You think that's the reason?
But again, I think we gotta reevaluate our value system and the value we place on money, on our generational trauma, on generational traditions that we're talking about here. So we have to evaluate those things and find out if it's relevant to where we are today. Because you could take some of those generational traumas and just pass them on to your kids. What's something that you're fearful of passing on to Alani when it comes to generational traditions or values?
Fearful of passing on? I don't think I've thought of that. I don't know if I'm fearful of passing it on, but I am, I guess, second guessing being physical with her. I don't know if that's a pass on to her though.
Like hitting her?
Yeah.
You want to hit her?
No, not hitting her. I'm second guessing, like beating her. You know, we all got beatings. I got beatings. Got beaten. What about? It is what it is. But I'm second guessing on if I need to go that far. I'm not at that point. Obviously, she's just 2 months old, if you will.
I mean, that could be a generational thing that we just got from our parents.
Oh, that is a generational thing. I mean, everybody thinks, yeah, you just beat them and keep it moving, right? But now, and it's funny because you always say, like, there should be courses about kids. There should be, and there is. There actually is now courses on raising your kids. Yeah. And I always see videos on Instagram, TikToks. I haven't taken any of these courses, but I just see people giving information and just speaking about different ways to handle things. And I'm like, I'm open to that. I am not saying that I will never hit my child. It won't get me there, but keeping in mind, I always think about with all the information that I receive, it's like, this is kind of you reacting.
Yeah.
You're kind of getting out of control at that time because, once again, it's a kid. So, and when they speak about your brain not fully developing all the way until like 27 to make all good decisions, those type of things I kind of think about now that I actually have a child. Before having a child, I would say, yeah, I'll be hitting my child. But now I'm like open to hearing other ways, basically. Yeah, so I'm open to hearing other ways. So that may be something, I don't know if that's something that I'm scared to pass down to her, but I'm just aware of it now.
Yeah, with the whole hitting, I want to talk, I don't want to say too much about this. So there was a process that I had went through, right? And this process was in college for a fraternity. I'm not going to say too much, but because we're a non-hazing organization. But there are things that you do or things that you saw and then you ask questions and it loses context as you go down generations. Mm-hmm. You lose the tradition or the value system that you place on it kind of gets watered down. Mm-hmm. It's like you're doing it because it was done to you. You're doing it because it was done to them. And then you start asking questions and you're like, wait, we don't even have to do this anymore.
Right.
Because you did that because that was the only way you could do this.
Yeah.
That's the only way that you knew at the time, especially where we are with technology, with information. There are so many ways you could do things nowadays. And it's like, we're only doing that because it was done to us or it was passed down to us or the value system that we had at the time was based on this. Or there was stuff that was done because you didn't have the money to do it. Mm-hmm. So now you're like, well, we didn't have the money, so we went in the dark and did this. It's like, oh wait, if I would have known that 20 years ago that you did that, I wouldn't be doing it today because I have light. I have money to pay for bills. It's like we don't have to do these certain things. Light. So we definitely got to figure out which what do we place our values into too? What do we place our values into, and where are we getting our value system from? Anything
that you're afraid to pass down to her? That's the only thing I think about. I don't know if I'm afraid.
For me, I think it still would be money. I don't think a lot. I think it's a money conversation. Like, I don't think I have a fear of right now, especially Alani's still young. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any fears of me giving her money or allowance or anything like that. But I think I just don't want to pass down my fears of not having money or saying there always has to be some value in money or something like that to her.
Okay.
But I do want to instill the value of her understanding where we came from and how we got here, but then also giving her own path to get to her own future. Like, we're going to give her, like, you could do this. Here's what we recommend. Mm-hmm. You go out and try it on your own. If it doesn't work, you come back and let us know. I'm open. I'm totally open to that. Like, giving her options.
Okay.
And allowing her to figure things out on her own. And if she fails, hey, come back. Let's try it again.
You know what it reminds me of? Something that I always am, like, anti when people say, like, you need to struggle to see the good, or you need to struggle first and then you really appreciate the other side once you actually struggle. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe that, and I will never believe that. I feel like I've had a good life and I still can appreciate things, but I think it goes back to how you, maybe your environment and how you grew up and how you were raised in regards to appreciating things. I'm not a fan of people struggling, because it's like, why do I need to struggle? But I think that goes back to that generational or that value things, like, well, mama done struggled and Sally done struggled, so we all got to struggle to understand that I got to appreciate this dollar, I got to appreciate this. And it's like, well, if you can do better for your child or your loved one, why make them struggle? Like, why does it need to be, I'm not saying they can't get a job and do things on their own, but it don't need to be that they're working at 7 years old, because that's what you did. You know what I mean? Yeah, they can have a lemonade stand if they want. Yeah, they can do certain things, but it doesn't need to be a struggle bus at all times, basically.
I definitely don't want our daughter having to work before she wants to. So she's like,
works hours.
Yeah, so that's another thing too. It's like we pass down those values of hard work and labor and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Listen, I'm okay with you learning a lesson another way. You don't have to learn a lesson the same way I learned a lesson.
Right.
I learned lessons by getting beatings. You may not have to learn the lesson the same way.
Yeah.
I learned the value of hard work. I was starting my first job at 12. You don't have to start your first job at 12. So there are things that I want to make sure we're passing on to our daughter, but it doesn't have to be learned the same way I had to learn it or you had to learn it.
Right.
So by giving her options will allow her to figure things out on her own. Mm-hmm. You said if she wants a lemonade stand, by all means, go ahead, do your thing. She doesn't want to do that, and she's like, hey, I want to do social media, by all means, go do that. I want to do YouTube. I want to be a plumber. Go do that. I want to start a cleaning business. You guys didn't know we have a 7-figure cleaning business where we teach people how to start and scale cleaning businesses. You can check us out at cleaningbusinessuniversity.com.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to share?
No, we were talking about Turks and it made a whole twist and twirly.
Twist and twirly. Hopefully you guys listen to the whole episode, man. We talked about a lot here, but if you listen to the concept, I think a lot of it came down to value systems, values that we place on money, and where do our value systems come from?
And they can change, and that's the big thing. They should be open to changing. I think that's what stops people from growing. And a lot of people end up in therapy because they can't change their values. They can't open up. They can't see past what they knew and seeing and understand, well, your parents could be wrong. And that's okay. Not that they were wrong on purpose, but that's okay. And having that understanding can get you further, I would say to that. So, but thank you for tuning in once again. Be sure to subscribe, leave us a comment, share, do what let other people know what we got going on. We are here every Tuesday. We are coming up on 2 years of hearing our voice every single Tuesday. If you've been here since the beginning, let me know. Let me know in the comments somewhere. Every single Tuesday. So thank you once again.
And if there's something that you guys want to hear us talk about, go more in depth, then we take feedback. So you guys can reach out to us. Don't just listen to the episode and just keep it moving or download it. You can leave us feedback. Help us help you. So if there's something that you guys want us to dive into, there's a topic that you want us to focus on, or you need some help with something, you want us to answer a question, we be answering questions, man. We go through the DMs. We answer questions live. Sometimes we do Instagram lives, or we just throw them in here. So you got anything that you guys want us to dive more into, let us know. But if not, we will see you next week. Peace.
Have a good one.